A lot has been said about John Dehlin and the Open Stories Foundation. If you don't know who John Dehlin is, he's probably the most prominent anti-Mormon media figure in the world. He hosts the Mormon Stories podcast and is the principal officer of the Open Stories Foundation. The Open Stories Foundation exists to promote understanding, healing, growth, and community for people experiencing religious transition. John is adored by many ex-Mormons and is known for being highly critical of the church. But what about those highly critical of John? There's some things you might want to know. It's important that you watch this video to the end. If you've left the church, we're not trying to convince you to come back. We're not trying to reconvert you. Many ex-Mormons feel as if they were lied to about the character of Joseph Smith. And feeling lied to about the founder of an organization you may be emotionally invested in is a terrible feeling. In fact, in the ex-Mormon community, if I were to refer to someone as charismatic, with an audience in the thousands, who has questionable financial matters and allegations of sexual abuse, you would probably assume I was talking about Joseph Smith. But I'm talking about John Dehlin. Now, before we dive into the nitty-gritty, there's some recent events we have to talk about. Recently, Fair Mormon posted a series of videos entitled This Is the Show, hosted by Brad Whitbeck and myself, in which we comedically take apart the CES letter. The videos were targeted toward high schoolers and young college students to get acquainted with the CES letter's material so it can be dismissed. Some older apologists didn't like the videos, and many ex-Mormons didn't like the videos. That's fine. I don't like Zelf on the Shelf. They don't like This Is the Show. It's tribalism. That's expected. However, because young people were watching This Is the Show, many memes were created on Twitter depicting me fighting John Dehlin. Here's a couple.
No! I have won!
You are old.
Have mercy. Please, please.
There is no mercy.
But there is another meme from Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Bastards. In reaction to it, John Dehlin expressed he was fearing for his safety. The meme was of a German soldier being beaten with a baseball bat by Eli Roth. This could potentially be viewed as a death threat. However, one has to ask how we can infer the German soldier is representing John Dehlin. It's because the name is keyframed over the soldier. So that would mean we can infer that Eli Roth is Stone 16, and the bat is TITS, the acronym for This Is the Show. If we can assume the soldier is Dehlin, then we can assume the bat is the show, in which case the message of the meme is that Dehlin is being taken down by the videos, and not that we're a squad of Danites coming after him and his family. He told his followers he was afraid for his life, online and in video.
Reactions that have been perceived as violent. And in my particular case, I've recently had people posting some very violent videos on Twitter and elsewhere, and some very, very dangerous. Forgive me, I'm feeling a little bit nervous, and so I'm a little bit jumbled and rambly this morning. But
he called the police on me, Cardin Ellis, and Braden. But what if I were to tell you that he wasn't afraid, and he was lying to his audience by giving them one reaction, but in private showing another? Well, we have evidence. As you can see, Saturday, December 5th at 12:15 a.m., he writes, Kwaku L. and Cardin Ellis of Fair Mormon just tweeted this. Warning, super violent. A friend advised me to call the police. Your suggestions? For the record, Kwaku is funded by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints via the More Good Foundation and Fair Mormon. Your suggestions? However, that same day, only a couple hours later, at 6:58 a.m., he messages Cardin Ellis. Says, Cardin, I'd have to run it by my wife, Margie, but I'd be willing to come on your show. Let me know if you're willing and what the details would be to make that happen. The topic I'm most interested in discussing is a sentiment you expressed in part 1 of Kwaku's anti-Mormon video, that your primary goal/motivation is for folks to get along. Let me know. I respect your talent. Kwaku and Brad, too. Now, I don't know about you guys, but if I was concerned that someone was truly trying to harm me, in fact, they were trying to send a message that people should kill me, I would not set foot in that person's presence, and I wouldn't be on their show. Later on that day, around noon, he says this: I took everyone's advice. I called 911 and reported the following people. So not only do we have John on video saying that he is distressed and afraid, but his first post regarding that is about how he's asking if he should call the police. Yet only a couple hours later in private, he's talking to Cardin, asking to come on the show. And then a few hours after that, in public, he's saying he's called the police. Kind of strange, right? That's not usually how people in fear act. But then we realize something. What are the odds that a grown man would actually call the police on a couple of memes made by some high schoolers? It seems a bit weird. It seems like it would be almost degrading to really do that, to really go through with it. Then we thought about something. In the state of Utah, all 911 calls are public record. We can go and find the transcript of John Dehlin's phone call. But we ran into a problem.
Listen carefully as our options have recently changed. You have reached a non-emergency phone number for the police department. If this is an emergency, please hang up and dial 911. If you need to report a non-emergency crime or incident, press 7 for the next available dispatcher. Police records.
Hi. My friend and I were hoping to get a copy of a report and or call that came in this past Saturday. We're not positive that the call actually happened. We were wondering if we could confirm if there was a call or report by a John Dehlin. I can spell that for you.
Okay. Go ahead.
So John, last name Dehlin, Dehlin.
And when did you say?
It should have been this. Yeah, it should have been this past Saturday, the 5th.
Do you know why there would have been a call, or?
Yes, there was some form of alleged threat that supposedly took place on social media.
I'm not showing a case, but check to see if.
Yeah, we weren't sure that you would.
Do you know about what time it would have occurred?
I can't say exactly, but early afternoon.
Oh.
Around noon, probably.
Yeah, I'm not finding anything in our calls or anything.
Sorry, could you say that one more time?
I'm not finding anything.
Okay, we weren't sure that you were. We appreciate you looking, though.
No problem. You have a good day.
You as well. As far as we can tell from calling the Salt Lake Police Department, John Dehlin didn't make any call regarding the meme, Stone 16, Kwaku, Brad, Braden, or myself.
It's worth noting that I did not tweet out the Inglorious Bastards meme. Cardin did not tweet out the Inglorious Bastards meme. We retweeted it, of the many memes made that weekend. Yet, based on this call, it sounds as if John didn't actually call the police on us. He didn't notify 911. The Salt Lake Police Department has no record. This whole situation, from John's angle, of giving one emotion to the public, but a different one in private to Cardin, and then perhaps lying about his calling of the police, is just the beginning of a paper trail of incredibly damaging evidence. John Dehlin may very well not be the person you think he is. Some time ago, John did an interview with his friend Mike Norton, also known as New Name Noah on YouTube, the individual who leaks temple films and conspired with a lesbian porn star, Christy Stevens, to film a lesbian sex scene inside of a Latter-day Saint temple. Clearly, John has made clear this past weekend that he decries violence of all sorts and does not want violence to ever be perpetuated upon anybody. So how does he react when an anti-Mormon in his own circle perpetuates violence? Does he distance himself from people like this?
Is how I guess, honestly though, now I think about it, I guess it depends on who the old man is. Dallin H. Oaks better hope he never runs across me in downtown Salt Lake. I really honestly think that would be one worth going to jail for. If I saw that man on the streets of Salt Lake, I might give him a head start and tell him, you need to walk away. You need to walk away right now, because I have a lot of anger towards that man. He has a lot of blood on his hands, and it would be difficult to refrain from clocking him.
I get a sense that you would say that you've sacrificed a lot to do what you do, that your activism has cost you a great deal of time, money. Do you want to give a 1-minute summary of what it's cost you?
Mike Norton also said this to a woman on a phone call. Brace yourself. The language is quite harsh.
And I am going to expose you to everybody for the monster you are. And by the time I'm done, you will be lucky if your own attorney is still on your side. You are so completely full of shit. And honest to God, if you were standing here in front of me, let me tell you, I've never hit a woman in my life, but I would break your fucking nose. You are a worthless piece of shit, McKenna. And let me tell you something. You know where I live. Show up at my house and you get a fucking bullet between your eyes.
So the hypocrisy of someone like John Dehlin to decry violence, which is clearly not violence, but a meme made by young people on the internet having some fun, is a bit interesting considering he has no issue lining himself with men who threaten to break women's noses or find elderly apostles in the street and punch them, or sneak porn stars into sacred buildings and film disgusting sex scenes. Talking about personal integrity and hypocrisy is one thing, but John also uses the church's history of racism against the church and against members. Now, we're not making any defense of any past racism in our church or others, but can you really decry racism when you've said things like this?
Super weird, and I don't mean to attack anyone, but like that an educated person of color who's a teen or in their early 20s in 2018 or 2017 or whenever Kwaku converted, with the internet, can you imagine an intelligent person of color ever deciding to join Mormonism? Like, isn't that like I don't want to be mean or insulting, but isn't that story in and of itself kind of mind-blowing?
There's some other
that's like some serious internalized hatred, self-hatred, because like how in the world can Mormonism not be racist? Like, I'm racist,
is that he doesn't speak like many Black people do. He has like a very English vernacular. He doesn't have like a Black dialect. So he speaks like a proper white person raised in Utah. So he's the perfect figure for Mormonism, because he's basically like seems like a white person with dark skin. The way he talks, the things he likes, the way he dresses. So yeah, and then
I'm racist.
Now, this next part is going to get a little confusing. It's also going to get really heavy because we're not just talking about petty Wasatch Front drama or perhaps lying to the police or Freudian slips of the tongue or confessions of racism or stereotyping. We're talking about allegations of John Dehlin sexually abusing women who worked for him. Strap in. This is going to be a wild ride.
I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, not only here in Salt Lake, but also in Virginia, where the Disciplinary Council is being held.
One of the most famous ex-Mormon women is the founder of the Ordained Women movement, Kate Kelly. For a long time, I assumed John and Kate were friends. She's been on his show, and they both sought to reform the church. But then, she tweeted this: "When someone is abusive, they attack and discredit people who know, in order to stop anyone from listening to what they have to say. I've seen this many times with John Dehlin, including to the women who filed a sexual harassment lawsuit against him. He told me she was crazy. Since he can't make the info not true, he wants people to believe those who have it are liars. Again, this is a common tactic for abusers. For example, Harvey Weinstein went to great lengths to discredit his accusers. That's how he was able to get away with it for so long. John Dehlin is very, very skilled at creating a victim narrative. He is a master at creating drama and noise to distract from legitimate critiques and making himself the center of attention. In every case, inconceivably, he manages to raise money off of his alleged victimization. Several credible women, including Christy Money and myself, have voiced concerns over his behavior, and it's catching up with him. He's having an increasingly hard time demonizing and dismissing trustworthy, straightforward people, who otherwise seem like they should be on his side. I, of course, have been blocked by him, but he often uses women as go-betweens to try and get me to forgive or make amends with him. This is gross for a whole host of reasons, but mostly because they try to insinuate I don't care about the community as a whole because I won't shut up. Abusive men try to twist things and say that it's truth tellers who hurt the community by telling the truth, rather than the person doing the actual action they are telling folks about. You'd be surprised how effective this tactic is. His bread and butter is taking advantage over very vulnerable people in a really hard transition, cult exit in their life. I just wish that men who benefit so incredibly much from vulnerable people in the community didn't always get the benefit of the doubt over women. Gadflies always attract extreme opinions. John Dehlin does get a lot of vitriolic hate comments and videos. We all do. It's awful and it comes with the territory. But some of the critiques, particularly from people who once knew and trusted him like me, are worth examining. Back in 2017, when I questioned the ethics of Mormon stories paying women far less than men, John Dehlin went from BFFs to enemy mode in the space of one single day. It was a complete and total Jekyll and Hyde in less than 24 hours. In many ways, I put some healthy distance between myself and Mormonism. I save my energy for new projects. John Dehlin doesn't have other projects. His status as an ex-Mormon pseudo-celebrity is all he's got. That's why he goes unhinged when that precarious status is threatened. Many vulnerable people look to him as the one throwing them a life raft in the choppy sea that is leaving Mormonism. I worry about someone who sucks up so much in the way of money, attention, free labor, particularly of women, and cannot do any self-reflection that's not performative. He's a flawed dude who routinely spirals into self-loathing fueled tirades on the internet. He's neither saint nor devil. Neither am I. However, he is an expert as monetizing everything, so I have no doubt he'll figure out a way to monetize this most recent pity party. There are incredibly talented, interesting, and amazing podcasts and communities cropping up every day in post-Mormonism. There are no prophets. Isn't that the point? It's time we consider giving so much attention to the one person who has done and has the potential to do so much harm. It's important for me to speak up, because in the past I was known for speaking up for John Dehlin. People told me about sexist, racist, homophobic stuff he said, or really problematic things he did to others, and I said, that's not my experience with him. I regret it. One woman came to me and told me she was a former employee and filed a sexual harassment lawsuit against John Dehlin with her state's Human Rights Commission. I went to him directly, and he convinced me she was crazy. Her claim had no merit. I continue to support him. I regret it. In our culture, our brains are already wired by our socialization under patriarchy to reflexively doubt women's claims and require supporting evidence for them beyond what we require for men's claims. Both men and women tend to be more skeptical of women accounts. I regret this. Here's a longer version of what I saw as problematic and what people can do about it. It's high time for a Mormon Me Too, and for everyone, myself included, to take women's words and experiences seriously. What Kate is warning about has been called John Dehlin's woman problem. There's a great deal online about John Dehlin and sexual harassment, but I can't just assume every claim is true. There needs to be due diligence. But Kate did mention Christy Money. I was able to find Christy's words about John and her work at OSF. And interestingly enough, it reads as if she's speaking about some sort of cult leader. Since I left the Open Stories Foundation in late 2016, a lot of people have asked me what happened. I've deliberated for months on what to say and how to say it. I have tried repeatedly to express my concerns privately to both John Dehlin and OSF to no avail. So even in the midst of painful morning sickness with baby number 5 and cross-country family move fog, I feel it's time to publicly call on Dr. Dehlin to release detailed OSF financials for 2016 and annually in perpetuity, especially if he's going to continue to assert that OSF is on a shoestring budget and he is not unduly profiting from it financially. Here are the concerns I have based on my experience. In late 2016, OSF completely revamped their pay structure for podcasters, so that while Dr. Dehlin continues to draw a regular base salary as CEO, with further unknown financial benefit from co-hosting podcasts with members of his household, collecting speaking fees for retreats, and performance bonuses, podcasters are not salaried employees. Rather, they are outside contractors, provided no benefits and paid relative pennies per download. On the justification that OSF is based in Utah, a right-to-work state, This change also coincides with the first year that OSF has not been transparent about its finances and the substantially large retreats began. Moderators who donate hours upon hours per week of their own time to moderate official OSF groups and funnel/support members into his organization have been invited to OSF banquets, but only if they pay for their food. I've come to know many individuals who were never paid by Dr. Dehlin for professional services they did for him personally, and OSF as an organization that they were promised. For my own time and travel to speak at a New York City OSF retreat, I was only comped for my flight, and only after sending 5+ reminder emails over 3 months. I was present when individuals who work for Dr. Dehlin have been brought to tears from how he treated them for privately in a very small group, expressing concerns about his behavior. Our witnessing their treatment seemed to me a warning that we would be treated similarly if he perceived our loyalty to be lacking. I have seen OSF's work be a force for good in the lives of people I care about, like my dear husband. At the same time, especially in light of recent events, like John's organizing of luxury retreats in the Bahamas and Australia, and his demand for loyalty and not answering for his behavior when approached privately, I regrettably must do this publicly. If Dr. Dehlin continues to criticize the church saying that it's not financially transparent, a nonprofit that acts like a for-profit, not helping those in need with excess funds that are instead put elsewhere, details unknown, etc., then it's important that he hold his own nonprofit institution to the same standard. When I was deliberating whether or not to stay with OSF last November, when issues between John and Kate Kelly unfolded, both John and the OSF board told me that we can't let John's reputation risk tarnishing, because if that happens, the church wins. I don't feel comfortable giving a pass and allowing an institutional culture like that within OSF leadership. Encouragement from the top to give problematic behavior from leaders a break sounds too familiar. My only goal is for this open letter to Dr. Dehlin to lead to a positive change. I hope it will. Controlling behavior, shady finances, and excusing mistreatment are all claims John Dehlin uses against the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Yet here's an ex-Mormon woman on Dehlin's side, accusing him of very similar things Kate Kelly is accusing him of. Everything except sexual abuse. When searching about these finances, I came across the 990s for the Open Stories Foundation. But I also came across a blog about a woman, anonymously named Rosebud. Rosebud's account of her relations with Dr. John Dehlin are extremely detailed and revealed something about the character of John. Listen, upon thinking it through this morning with everything that's going on in the press and my life, now is as good a moment as any to share. This gets to the heart of why I'm so disgusted about what's happening right now. At first, John really seduced me. It was nice to be heard and be speaking to a man who had the ability to perceive my perspective and how I felt. I learned a lot about what was missing in my marriage from him. Having married before, I understood enough about life and myself. But as time went on, I got to know him better. I began to understand the danger of my situation, the danger that has since unfolded in his media spectacle. I was still strangely emotionally attached to him, something I understand a lot better now. But at the time, I was stuck protecting him, while I was vulnerable to whatever he might try to do to hurt me in the present or future. I see it now as a bit like Stockholm Syndrome. I see a similar phenomenon in members who protect the church despite how poorly it treats them. Anyway, as time went on, I was acting less and less for my own self, and in my own self-interest, and more in the interest of self-protection, which admittedly is also a self-interest, but it is a different one than desire for love and affection. It's a desire for safety. Well, one night after a conference, I said goodnight to John and our host in the home where we were staying. I had told John, like so many times before, not to come to my room to bother me. We had been minimally sexual, although I didn't understand how minimally at the time because I had no real experience with normal sex then, and I took it all so ridiculously seriously, and I wanted him to leave me alone and knock it off. Well, as usual, he didn't do as I requested. I went up to the child's bedroom, where I'd been asked by the host to sleep, and got in bed. Before long, John was at the bedside groping my breasts. Yes, the irony considering the current media situation. I was so hurt and scared and tired of the dynamics. That time, I pushed him away. I had not consented. I was angry that he was treating me that way. But I was not safe because I was well aware by then of the huge consequences of saying no. And in that moment, I remember thinking, what's the difference between this and non-consensual groping? The fact that I'm not crying out loudly to stop him and get help? But it wouldn't have been safe for me to scream for help. I was unsafe because John was busy lying publicly and putting together his plans to get the church and to build his narrative and fame. And I was too afraid of what would happen if I reported. I eventually did report, and all of my fears came true. I had good reason to be afraid. I was spot on. So was the difference between that and non-consensual groping the fact that I had fully consented in the past, so he now had license to call what was happening in that moment also consensual? What was he doing? Was what he was doing okay because in the past I had said no, but he had cajoled my no into a yes, so he was justified in trying to do that again? Or was it just plain wrong that he ever came into my room in the first place? Those were my thoughts at the time. I understand better now, but that is where I was then. It's important to note that John Dehlin, at this time, was married to his wife Margie. So not only does this appear to be an account of sexual harassment, but some form of adultery. With this alleged account, I felt it necessary to keep looking and see if there were any non-anonymous women who have come forward and alleged Dr. Dehlin broke rules. After all, Kate Kelly, a former friend of his, did in fact mention he has a woman problem. It led me to a Medium article written by a woman named Anne McMullen. The article is called 10 Ways to Tell the Difference Between the True Victim Advocates and Imposters. And sure enough, this paragraph appeared. In the past, men have latched onto women's stories of rape and blasted the stories throughout the interwebs for the purpose of harming other men in the Mormon Church. Women's stories of victimhood have predictably become the battleground for men's grudges against other men. What's new? Nothing. These men are not victim advocates, but activists forwarding their own agenda. Most renownedly, John Dehlin, public figure, podcaster, and executive director of the Open Stories Foundation, regularly publicly attacks alleged Mormon abusers and exploiters to harm the Mormon Church, promote his own business, garner donations, and cover up his own sexual and financial exploitations. I am done standing on the sidelines and quietly allowing these exploiters to continue their exploitations of real victims for personal gain. Anne McMullen co-hosts the What We Know podcast, where she and Matt Long use case studies, evidence, stories, and truth-telling to empower everyday people and highlight the abuses of public figures, influential community leaders, and powerful public and private institutions. Now, Anne did not say she was a victim. She was not giving any personal account. But I found this interesting self-description. She says she has victim creds in spades. I wanted to know more about Anne, so I began Googling Open Stories Foundation, Anne. It led me to this PDF upload, Open Stories Foundation Profit and Loss. Besides John Dehlin, the name Ann Peffer is the only other name on this document. It looks like she was on payroll for $32,000. So we're dealing with two Anns, ironically. Anne McMullen, who claims Dehlin has sexual improprieties, and Ann Peffer, who is on OSF payroll. In continued search, I found this Salt Lake Tribune article op-ed from July 15, 2017, about protecting children from abusers. The author? Anne McMullen Peffer. So it looks like Anne McMullen, who was writing about John Dehlin's sexual behavior, is the same woman who was on payroll for OSF. But is this a smoking gun? Well, I was sent these screenshots from years ago. I was probably still in middle school when this conversation was being had, but the conversation was regarding Anne and John's relationship on a grouper page called Mormon Hub. Lindsay Hansen Park tells her that the page is not an appropriate place to share her story. But there's another screenshot on a Mormon discussions page of someone talking about being treated poorly at OSF, and on the Mormon Hub page. It is clearly Anne, but the name written by the user is not Anne. It's Rosebud. So what does all of this mean? Are we saying that John Dehlin is a sexual predator? Are we saying that he is manipulative and has lied to his audience? No. All we're saying is that you deserve to know what many others have said. Ask yourself these questions. Is it okay to lie to the people already in trauma for feeling lied to? Is it okay to pretend to be afraid of someone in public while working a deal with them in private? Is it okay not to pay women who work for you? Is it okay to follow a woman to a guest room and grope her breasts against her will? Is it okay to cheat on your wife? Is it okay to give a platform to men who want to kill women? Is it okay to be blatantly racist toward young black people? Is it okay to build your empire on a throne of lies? You deserve to hear the alleged experiences. Essentially, We're saying that if these things are true, it should change the dynamic of how you view his program, his questions, his style, his marketing, and his moral character. Of all the Mormon stories on the Mormon Stories show, this one might be the grand finale.